Welcome to this historical explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most pivotal, yet honestly kind of overlooked chapters in early Islamic history. We are stepping back in time to the year 2 AH. Picture the ancient, serene city of Medina. The Muslims have just secured this astonishing, history-altering victory at the Battle of Badr. The massive powers of disbelief across Arabia are literally trembling, and the flag of Islam is flying high. But beneath this surface of triumph and peace, a really dangerous internal threat is brewing right inside the city walls. Despite a rock-solid peace treaty being in place, fires of jealousy and malice are just burning in the hearts of hidden enemies. So today, we're diving into this very first major crisis that struck Medina from the inside out, Ghazwa Bani Qaynuqa. To really wrap our heads around this crisis, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the aftermath of Badr, uncover the conspiracy, and then look at the tragic market incident that set it all off. After that, we'll cover the historic 15-day siege, the divine revelations that came down, and finally, the exile and the big takeaways.
All right, part 1, the aftermath of Badr. So you have to understand, the victory at Badr wasn't just a military win. It was an absolute earthquake that sent shockwaves all across the Arabian Peninsula. And while the Muslims were celebrating, this sudden massive shift in power deeply unsettled the hidden enemies living right there in Medina. And the pacing of history here, it's incredibly fast. Look at this timeline. In 1 AH, the Covenant of Medina is established. By Ramadan of 2 AH, Badr happens. And then, almost immediately after, in Shawwal, we see a complete, catastrophic breach of peace leading straight into a 15-day siege. To really grasp the severity of what's about to happen, we have to talk about the Mithaq in Madinah, or the Covenant of Medina. This was the foundational peace treaty. It established mutual defense, security, and harmony among all the diverse tribes living in Medina, and that absolutely included the Jewish tribes. Breaking this wasn't just, a minor offense or a simple misunderstanding. It was high treason. It threatened the very fabric of this brand new state.
Which brings us to part 2, conspiracy and betrayal. While the state was relying on this treaty for peace, secret plots were actively forming in the shadows, and they were being spearheaded by a man named Ka'b bin Ashraf. He was a poet, a Jewish tribal leader, and he was completely enraged by the Muslim victory at Badr. Our historical sources tell us he actually traveled all the way to Makkah in grief. He stood there, recited tearful elegies for the fallen Quraysh leaders, and actively incited the Meccan disbelievers to take revenge. Then, he returns to Medina and begins conspiring in secret with the Bani Qaynuqa tribe to totally dismantle the growing Islamic power from within.
So who exactly were his co-conspirators? The Bani Qaynuqa. Now, they weren't just any tribe. They were heavily armed, and they occupied some of the most fortified strongholds right inside the city of Medina. They were wealthy tradesmen, highly skilled goldsmiths, and honestly, their alliance with Ka'b was a huge deal. It meant they had the wealth, the weapons, and the strategic location to pose a very real existential threat.
Let's move to part 3, the tragic market incident.
So you've got this toxic mix of hidden hatred and heavy weaponry, and it's about to violently spill over. Picture the scene. It's the Bani Qaynuqa market. It's this bustling, noisy trade center packed with goldsmith shops. A Muslim woman from the Ansar goes into this market to buy some goods. She sits down at a goldsmith shop, but instead of being treated like a normal customer, she faces this severe, devastating, and totally disrespectful harassment from some mischievous local merchants. And this right here perfectly illustrates how quickly a tiny spark can ignite a massive fire. Here is how it all went down. First, the harassment escalates when these merchants actually attempt to violently unveil the Muslim woman. This was an extreme violation of her modesty, her honor, and absolutely a violation of the peace treaty. Second, seeing this horrific outrage, a protective Muslim man steps in to defend her. In his righteous anger, he strikes and kills the offending goldsmith. And finally, the immediate retaliation. The local mob of merchants completely swarms this lone Muslim man and violently martyrs him right there in the street. Just like that, the peace of Medina was shattered. This was the first open act of war. The Covenant of Medina was completely shredded. Now for part 4, the 15-day historic siege. There was absolutely no going back from this open treason. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the news in Shawwal 2 AH, he had to respond decisively. He immediately mobilized the companions, marched right up to the fortresses of Bani Qaynuqa, and laid down an agonizing siege. And it lasted for 15 straight days.
For 15 days, they were locked inside those walls until overwhelming fear finally struck their hearts and they realized they were totally, utterly helpless. But right at this critical, tense juncture, a new figure steps onto the stage. Abdullah ibn Ubayd. Known throughout history as the chief of the hypocrites, he suddenly jumps in to protect his old allies, the Bani Qaynuqa. His actions here were just frantic and completely disrespectful. He rushed up to the Prophet, peace be upon him, in an absolute panic. He actually grabbed the Prophet's garment. Can you believe that? And he just relentlessly kept insisting and begging for the lives of the very traitors who had just shattered the city's peace. Now, because of the broader social and highly volatile political dynamics at that specific moment, the Prophet reconsidered the penalty of execution and instead changed the command to permanent exile from Medina. Moving on to Part 5, Divine Revelations and Hadith. These traumatic events, they weren't just recorded in history books, right? They were immortalized in timeless spiritual guidance. Look at this powerful verse revealed specifically regarding the principles of handling treachery. Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 58 says, "And if you fear treachery from a people, throw their treaty back to them on equal terms. Indeed, Allah does not like traitors." This set a divine, absolutely unequivocal ruling on exactly how an Islamic state must deal with broken treaties and treason, firmly, fairly, and completely out in the open. And what about Abdullah ibn Ubayd and his frantic defense of the traitors? Well, Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 52, brilliantly exposes this two-faced nature. It says, "So you see those in whose hearts is disease hastening into association with them, saying, 'We are afraid a misfortune may strike us.'" It's incredible. It perfectly captures the hypocritical diplomacy of those who prioritize their corrupt backdoor alliances over the actual safety and truth of the community. And we know all these details with absolute certainty. The rich tapestry of this whole event is locked in by the most reliable historical sources we have. We're talking narrations from legendary historians like Sirat ibn Ishaq and Hafez ibn Kathir, right alongside authentic hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari narrated by companions like Abdullah bin Umar. They all confirm the siege, the surrender, and the ultimate clearing of this massive turmoil or fitna right out of Medina. Finally, Part 6, Exile and Final Lessons. And so we reach the final resolution to Medina's first great internal trial. The decree was absolute. The Bani Qaynuqa had to go. Picture this visually. You have this heavily armed, incredibly wealthy tribe packing up the whole shebang, their families, their goods, marching out of the city gates and heading far away towards Khaybar and the lands of Syria. This massive shift permanently altered the power dynamics in the region, and most importantly, it restored a completely vital layer of security to the fledgling state of Medina. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. A real provocative question to chew on. How crucial is internal unity against the trials of betrayal? The story of Ghazwa Bani Qaynuqa is such a timeless lesson. It shows us that, sure, external victories like Badr are monumental, but the swift, strong, and united handling of internal treason, that is what truly guarantees the long-term survival of a community.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into history. If you found this explainer valuable and you want to keep exploring these fascinating cinematic stories with us, please make sure to subscribe and like Animated Quranic Tales. We have an amazing journey coming up next as we dive into the background of the Battle of Uhud. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.